Hi, good evening, home language. It's Wednesday, the 20th of October. It is now 5:10. So this is week 11. I thought I'd start my recording, my learning event right now. And from a bit of a blustery but warmish day in PE, I'm bringing you this learning event, the second last of the semester. We're getting there fast and furiously, and I hope you're all doing well, coping with all your pressures with assignment 3 and everything else that's been coming due. I've had a few requests to postpone or to delay, but I've changed it all to the 25th, which gives you another 24 hours. I'm sure that's going to help you. It's not really that a big deal. It's not really hard to do assignment 3, and I've been seeing some lovely drafts coming in. So I think some of you are really managing quite well. So let me share my screen and get to tonight's learning event. There we go. Slideshow. I'm sure those of you that did this for your PowerPoints are quite aware how nice it is to use Zoom as a practice for presentations. So we're still on Unit 3. It's our third session in Unit 3, Language in Practice, but it's looking at creating tests and assessment rubrics, which is quite nice. It's exactly what you'll be doing for assignment 3, so hopefully this might help a bit. I'm not sure. And there you can see my two images, assessment, but the reaction mostly of students and learners is exam stress. It's something that's quite a hard and tough time. I think all of you look back on your assignment times, your exam times. It's not always been a party. It's sometimes been quite difficult. I know some people excel during exams and test times, others do not. So it's all our different kinds of makeups that make us there. But how can we as teachers be better test setters and to assess what our learners really know or don't know according to the type of assessments that we actually put together? And this was quite interesting for me doing assignment 3 and looking at what you're doing, because a well-structured assessment and the right type of questions will give you reliable and valid results, which can test the performance of students and help you to revise the work that needs to be done and look for gaps in what learners know or don't know. I've got something here. This has come up here. I'm just going to turn it off there. Hope you couldn't see that. Okay, I'm going on to my next slide. Okay, my lovely spreadsheet, looking at what's happening. I have postponed the submission of week 9 till Friday night, the 22nd. That's my assignments. There it is, because a lot of you had problems. I think it was Sunday night with ECI going down. I think the whole world was trying to submit things and the system couldn't actually cope with it. So week 9 so far, it still hasn't closed. There's 51 of you that have for FET that have completed your online tracking, 83 already for SP. So you've got for Friday night to go on with that. Week 8 had a nice little 53 and 88. Week 10, I can see some of you already started, 16 for FETs and 26 for week 10. That closes on Sunday, the 24th, I think it is. Assessment 3 comes in on the 25th now, that's Monday. Assessment 4, I think it's the following Monday. So the pressure is on. Okay, speaking about assessments, assignment 2 is in the marking process. Nothing has been completed yet. For SPs, I'm very sorry for assignment 1. There's been a whole big issue. One of my markers has been marking offline and is battling to get the marks uploaded. There's 65 of you are implicated there, so the marks can't be released until I get her marks in. Has to still go to IM. I'm really working on it. I'm really sorry that there's been this delay in getting your assignment 1 marks back to you, but the home language FETs, yours is out and waiting. I'm sure you've all seen your marks already. Okay, I'm sorry about that. That's my sad face for that. Okay, let's look at the program. We're into week 3. We've looked at critical language awareness. That should be home language, not FL. I'm sorry about that. Choosing suitable texts for critical language last week. And this week, we're looking at creating tests and assessments, not only rubrics, but the entire exam paper. Ferreira has got a chapter on that, but most of tonight comes from Colleen. This is really amazing CAPS reference. It's my recommended book. It's the last chapter, chapter 15 of Clean, and a lot of my work from tonight comes from this. He's really a very strong writer for CAPS-based work. I would really recommend you get it if you can. And then next week, my final week, yes, a lot of you are going to be very relieved to see the last of me. I'm actually look at a theoretical background to assessments, which is quite interesting as well, to finish it all up. Okay, so why do we assess learners? Why do we have to assess you? Okay, I'm sure many of you ask these questions. Why can't we just pass you all the time? And if you look at CAPS, they've got the National Protocol for Assessment from grades R to 12. It's protocol, we have to do it. And we have to, as teachers, we have to generate evidence of learner performance. Yes, I've just written a whole report on semester 1 for you, where I've had to generate evidence of your pass rates, the mark allocations, the reasons for the poor failure rate for some of those assignments. I've got to give evidence of your performance so it's been recorded and reported. So this is why we have to do it, to keep track of you all. So you've got to allocate marks, which can be translated into achievement levels. So if you get 80, it's your distinction level. If you get 50, it's your pass level, for instance. If you get 49, it's your fail level. So it's to determine which learners are ready to progress to the next grade, so that when you've passed all your assessments and your assignments with a lovely average of 50, there's nothing wrong with that, you can get your PGCE. Okay, and I'm sure you all know about the systems. This is the one in CAPS section 4. All of you can see this at the back of your CAPS documents, which I'm sure you all have. Number 7 is the outstanding achievement competence with 80 to 100%. Whereas if you get 1, it means you haven't achieved the competence, you've got 0 between 29. But if you can see, there are no degrees within that, so you don't know how badly you failed it, or how well you have achieved. So you don't know you got 90. So that's the one drawback of just getting a 7. You like to know, well, am I 100 or 98, or am I 81? Which would be quite nice to know. Or you like Bart, which I always say to my students, you see, he passes and he gasps and look how happy he is. He got an A, he got a D minus. Okay, I passed. And that's very, very important to get that as well. Diana, Bruce is here. I'm just in the middle of a lecture. I'll be with you now. Okay. That was my sister. Sorry about that. Why are learners assessed? Okay, we assess learners for many purposes. Okay, not just to torment them and make things tough for them. They provide meaningful indicators, okay, these assessments of what our learners know and what they can do. Yes, it gives me all those positive things that, oh my word, I know you can do an in-text reference. I know you can, you know how to put a reference list together. You know how to set questions and instructions, or you don't. Okay, those are things that come through to me from your assessments. Have you achieved the particular LOs that have been set out? Then I can evaluate that knowledge, okay? And your progress, and identify the gaps. Oh my word, they still don't know how to do in-text referencing. Okay, they still don't know how to put headings. They still don't know how to stop plagiarizing. So all those things are the gaps in your knowledge and skills, which I can identify from the assessment. They provide feedback to the learners as well, the summative and the other types of feedback you get on that. On your assessments, you should all have those little things on your script. It's the TAG acronym. You tell them something you like. Well, I like your headings. Why did you not use a heading here? Give a suggestion. Please use headings everywhere, just for example. And they provide a basis for reporting learner achievement to parents, to guardians, to universities, to future work givers. These are so important, these reports that you get. And yeah, Melody's quite impressed with her. She's got 3 2s and 1 3, and she's glad she's got a wonderful report card. And not only that for the learners, but also helps the teachers identify ways of improving their teaching. Okay, so how they can improve what they are doing. Okay, so what can appropriate assessment do? It can extend learner understanding, because they can see what they know and then what they don't know. I can encourage them to put more effort into their learning, and I hope this does for you as well, also encourages you. It helps teachers to diagnose specific learner difficulties. What don't they know? What can I see? They don't know how to write a conclusion. They don't know how to write an introduction. They're battling to reference. When they're anxious and lost and confused, as many of you often are. It helps you to identify barriers to learning. Why are my students falling asleep in my class all the time? Why don't they ever bring their homework with them? Why don't they ever complete exercises? Okay, how can I rectify this? How can I determine what things need to be revised or retaught? What does this child, why can't they write in grade 9? Why can't they read in grade 9? What can I do to fix this up? What can I do to change it? Okay, and then I can do the whole revision cycle. I can see what they know, what don't they know? When did this happen? Why? How can I fix this up? All the questions you can ask. So with all of this, we need purposeful assessment so they can tell us what we know and what we don't know, what we can do to fill the gaps, what we can do to revise effectively. So for a purposeful assessment, it must be appropriate. So if I'm giving them an essay, I don't give them a multiple choice type assessment. I give them an essay to write. If I'm trying to work out if they know what antonyms are for a certain word, I can give them a multiple choice type question. So I must use appropriate forms of assessment. I must minimize the factors that could lead to misinterpretation of those responses. Okay, so if they do a multiple choice for an essay and they get 100%, I can't go around saying, oh, my students know how to write an essay because they all got 100% for it. It was a multiple choice question. I can say if they're writing a proper essay and they all get 70% for it, I can say, yes, I can interpret that correctly, that they're understanding basically quite well how to write an essay. So I must give the appropriate form of assessment. And that's what you need to determine as a teacher. What are you assessing? What are you using to assess? So only then will I have a reliable, if I'm assessing an essay using an essay, not a multiple choice question that's reliable, it's trustworthy information. I can trust it. I can't say they all know how to write an assignment or an essay and get 100% if I'm using a multiple choice type question. And I then can use that information for decision making. What do I need to develop? What do I need to refine? What do I need to reteach? So I should go through this whole analysis, and I really do, because I've already setting the assessments for 2022. And based on what's happened this year, I've had to change quite a few things to prevent plagiarism, prevent downloading from past papers, to develop more original work with papers, checking the essays, maybe looking at the case studies. These are kinds of things that I've had to reflect on all the time because I've seen the difficulties that have happened. And it's what teachers do all the time. So I'm going to look at formal and informal type assessments. They both are important. And then we're going to look at summative and formative type assessments. Okay, formal assessments is normally a pre-planned tests, which ensures that you know that the student has mastered or not mastered the learning outcomes. So you get a test which they can prepare for, and have they achieved the learning outcomes. So this is a substantial assessment task. It's important. It's not just a baby one, a little one, okay? It's an important one, and it'll result in official records that are going to be put down for the report giving. And so that's going to be your final exam, your June exam, those important substantial assessments. CAPS gives you all the types that you should have. There's quite a few. There's like 2 tests, 7 tasks. There's a lot of assessment tasks that you need to do. There's a yearly assessment plan. If you go through CAPS, look at section 4, you'll see all of those. It must occur at a predetermined time. Is it May? Is it June? Is it October? There must be a detailed marking guide. That's why I'm so onto marking guides. You have to have marking guides, and you have to give feedback to students based on that. Yes, they must know beforehand that there is going to be an exam. They should have an exam timetable. They must be able to prepare for it. Okay, you mustn't just spring a surprise test on them and say that's a substantial piece of assessment. It's not. We have a high stakes tests, which are your exams, which are normally for promotion or keeping you back. And we have our informal, developmental type, formative type of tests, which are low stakes, which doesn't really matter if you get some wrong, as long as it's a learning event from that. So if you look at this cartoon, quite interesting. I'm going to need more specific feedback on my formative assessments, he says. You can't just say bad dog, okay? You've got to give more feedback so they know why they did the mark they achieved. Like you always ask me, why did I get that mark? So on the other hand, the informal, there's no pressure, okay? It's developmental. It can occur at any time. You don't have to prepare your students for it. You should be observing all the time. They don't really have to be aware that they're even being assessed, okay? But you need this for your record keeping. Doesn't always require a product. They don't always have to write a paragraph or task or summary. It could just be observation or discussion that they're having, how well they're working in the groups, how well they're getting together to do the assignment. You don't really even have to have a detailed record of that, all right? But sometimes teachers choose to keep the details because they might need to plan interventions and to reflect on their teaching. They're in a group work, but they're not really discussing what's on the worksheet. Why is this happening? Why hasn't everyone got a role? Why is only one person doing all the work? So I want to plan something so that next time everyone does something in the group. I'm determining whether they totally understand, they sort of understand, and those that really don't understand, okay? I know a lot of you don't ever watch my videos because I can see that in the questions you ask me about the assignments, I say to you, I give you a lot of important information in these, but if you choose not to watch, then you mustn't send me emails to ask me what is the structure of paper 2 when I've spoken about that quite ad nauseum. Okay, so you have to actually be part of the process to actually be able to understand what's going on. You've got to be present and not vacant. So let's just look at home language FET, the formal assessments that are required according to the National Protocol for grades R to 12. It's what we call the school-based assessment that's to be used in all grades, in all subjects. It's a combination of the formative and the summative assessment. The formative is the developmental type assessments. Summative is your exam assessments. And this differs per grade and is described in CAPS for each subject. So it's all there. It's your go-to manual is CAPS. If you're not sure, go to CAPS. And this is the one for the high language, FET. You can see the formative is 25% during the year, whereas the more formal assessment is 75%, which is your end of year exams, which makes up of your oral and your written exam, 62 and 12%. All right. This is for grade 12, so other one was 10 and 11 still, 25% and 75%, although the papers might have changed and the times, it's still the 25-75%. There we go, there we go. Let's look at SPs, page 125, CAPS. You can see it's changing now. The formative is 40%. There's the 4 oral tasks, 3 writing tasks, 2 tests, 1 mid-year examination, all form part of the formative. The summative is your end of year exam, the written examination, the paper 2 and paper 3, which you're busy doing, as well as the oral assessment counts 60%. This is for grade 9, that other was for grade 8, still 40%, 60%, 4 oral tasks, 3 writing tasks, 2 tests, 1 examination, and there's the 60%. Let's look at formative and summative. Formative, remember, is your developmental. Summative is your final exams. Formative assesses during the course instruction. It gives the content, knowledge, understanding, helps you to understand if there's gaps in what students understand, their knowledge and their skills. How do I close those gaps when I think about it? How am I going to use this information to give diagnostic feedback to the learners so they know what they know and what they don't know? So I can understand the limitations and what they have learned. They don't really know how to work out tense. How are they going to do indirect speech, for instance? They don't even know what pronouns are. How are they going to change from direct to indirect speech? Those are things you need to consider. This feedback, your formative feedback, helps the learners also to understand what they need to do to improve their work. And therefore, you can make amendments to your instruction because of the formative, to reteach and make more opportunities to practice. I think maybe a lot of you said that I must give you more information on CAPS. This is what you felt that you were lacking. So what must I do? I must revise next year to give more information on CAPS. I'm hoping that this assessment, assignment 3, is going to give you a lot of understanding of how the CAPS document works. So you're going to use your formative for remediation, for interventions, for reteaching. The summative, on the other hand, is at the end of the course. It's your exams, when you're going to draw conclusions, not for developing them, about their knowledge and understanding and their skills. For instance, this lovely cartoon, maths, look at that. Okay, let's see how much you remember. And that's basically what summative is. And the big thing is about summative, because you're doing it at the end, it has actually a limited value, because this information cannot be used to help students learn anything more. It's now over. It's like when you give an essay and even if you give feedback, it's not going to help them with the next essay. With the assignments, I wonder if it's helping you to improve your next assignment. I think getting feedback from me on your drafts is more important than the feedback from your previous assignment, because they don't really link with each other, I think. So formative, again, is to improve learning for your students, whereas summative is to grade them so they can pass. It's their progress. And I love this ladder with showing where we're going. We're moving up in the learning development, but we need all those formative steps to get to that summative. Formative, 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 and then right at the top is only the summative. This is my practicing, this is my development, this is how I'm learning my limitations and I can overcome, so that when I reach the summative, I can get on top of the roof. The ladder's not going to fall down. So broader CAPS assessment requirements, and you know the CAPS document is that teachers must gather valid and reliable information about the performance of their students in an ongoing state, okay? Valid, reliable performance all the time, consistently. There must be clearly defined criteria so that you can use this evidence for making judgment against it. So you must have proper rubrics, proper tests. You mustn't give an essay that's multiple choice, for instance. Use a variety of methods, tools, and techniques in context. CAPS says, especially for English, to use a variety of contexts to develop your protocols. Then you've got to record the findings so you can track progress of your learners. I'll also track you. I've got a whole spreadsheet where I've got all your marks. And when I mark the next thing, I check and see how you're doing in relation to what you've done before. Yes, I do it. So yeah, we've got a spreadsheet. We've got Chinky, who got B+, and there's all his marks for accountancy, English, maths, economics, and business economics. His average was 63, so you've got a B+, and this is the kind of grades that we have in our spreadsheets. I have all of those as well. So we report on each learner's progress in a specific format, which might look like that. And then the report card goes out to the poor guardians. Yes, a big shock in his eyes, holding his head. I think sometimes some of you might feel the same way, rather than elated and saying, yay. So assessment reliability is very, very important. We don't want unreliable, that this assessment doesn't really count. It doesn't show anything. And there's 8 ways that I'm going to go through now to show you how assessments can be reliable. This thing we look at the number of items. If it's a short test and you get one thing wrong, often your mark is greatly affected. If it's a long test, longer, if you make one mistake, a spelling mistake, it's not going to make that much difference. So you have these high stake tests and the lower stake tests where you can maybe make more errors and won't affect your mark that much. So if you have a small number of questions, it tends to be a bit unreliable, especially if you've got a whole lot of multiple choice. So if it's 10 questions and you get 2 wrong, okay, so you get 80%, which might not be reliable of telling you how much you know or you don't know. That's the normal standardized tests. Sometimes they're not really that valid. It only measures a small number of aspects. It's not going to measure everything. As the number increases, so say you've got 50 rather than 3, it becomes more reliable. There's a better sample of learner knowledge and understanding. So you should maybe, if multiple choices, have up to 50 questions. If you have only out of 10, it's not really an indication of what they know or don't know. You must have a greater range of outcomes to be tested. I'm not only testing, remember, Bloom's and our cognitive levels. You're not only looking at remembering and understanding, you're looking at creativity, evaluation, analysis, comparison, and so on. The longer tests also reduce the chance factors, the unreliability, like simple mistakes won't really matter, but it can cause fatigue. If you give everyone a 4-hour exam, a 2-hour exam might be long for you as well, causes fatigue. And how often have you felt like that by the time you get to the end of the exam paper? You've got to think about things like that as well. Number 2, difficulty of the items. If you make your whole test creation, evaluation, and judgment, it's going to be a very difficult assessment, okay? So you've got to look at how difficult your items are. So if it's very difficult, you're going to also give your students limited opportunities to demonstrate what they've learned, because they can't actually answer the question. So how can you really assess what they know or don't know? And they might become very discouraged and not attempt anything more. So be careful of too many difficult questions. If you have too many easy questions, it's also going to give you limited information. What do they really know and what do they really understand? Am I only testing knowledge and understanding? Am I giving them any more levels, level 5? Am I giving them the creation level from Bloom? So have a range of questions rather. So easy questions to encourage them to get going, especially at the beginning. Then difficult questions to challenge, and those can often be at the end of your quiz, the good and the bad. So keep the difficult ones to the end, otherwise they might give up and not even go on. And the interesting thing about the brain is, if you've read a difficult question, start with the easy ones, your brain will start thinking about that question, the ideas will come through. And by the time you get to that question at the end of the paper, you might exactly know what you should be answering. So we're still through reliability, number 3 now, test item discrimination. So we want our questions to be valid, okay, and reliable. That means if you've got your bright spark in your class who has a high level of understanding, he should or she should answer correctly. If your bright spark gets everything wrong, there's something wrong with your questions in the way you've set them. However, if the person's got a low level of understanding and hasn't really studied, they should be answering them incorrectly. They shouldn't get them all right. There's something wrong. If someone doesn't really understand and they get your answers right, there's something wrong with your test item discrimination. So questions that do not discriminate well between what they know at different levels is going to reduce the reliability. Okay, sometimes people don't even look at the answers and they might get 100%. There's something wrong with the test as well for that. Okay, coming on to number 4, what about guessing? Okay, I can see in multiple choices. Often students may guess. I've had students finish a test in 2 minutes, 50 questions, because they just guess what the answers are. So the more they guess, the less reliable is your test. If you have lots of true and false questions, it also makes it unreliable. Check the wording, and this is why when I check your drafts of your assignment 3, if I can't understand, there's something wrong with the wording, because if your wording is not clear, the learners will not understand how to answer it, and they will also become confused, and they won't be able to answer the question, especially if there's missing information or confusing words that you're using, and therefore your test results will also be unreliable. So no guessing, and check your wording and your instructions. Coming on to your environment, your test environment, especially with COVID, how many people are together? Are the windows open? What about masks? Can you hear? Can you not hear? How noisy is it? It's getting into summer. Is it going to be very, very hot in the classroom? Is it very humid? All these things play a part on learning, and it might hinder the student's ability to write the exam. Is it too noisy? Is it too hot? Are they hungry? Are there sounds outside? Are they stressed? These are test environment things we need to consider as well. What about how the answer is interpreted? Okay, this is your marker. The judgment of learning can be objective or subjective depending on how the learning is interpreted by the marker. So if it's an essay, it's often going to be a subjective, because it's my opinion, what I think. Objective is more your multiple choice. The online tracking is objective. It's marked by the computer, not by me, but you might find that the assignment marking is more subjective. And that makes it more difficult to be fair, I think, if it's more subjective. Multiple choice requires little interpretation, it's right or wrong, whereas essays require high levels of interpretation, which might become very subjective. If you look at the meanings of subjective and objective, subjective means it's my personal opinion, how I'm marking you, my judgment, my feelings, my point of view, which might be very subjective and might not be very fair, whereas multiple choice is often objective, it's factual, based on observations and measurements, which you can see to be true or false quite easily. So therefore, we often have to have rubrics with our criterion, so that when we're not being too subjective, we've got a mark criteria for referencing, for language, for content. So we need a complete and clarification on our rubric and marking guide to prevent subjectivity taking place in our marking. So without a comprehensive marking guide, it's very difficult to get marking consistency, even if there's only one marker. So even with me, I have to go back and check how I looked at reflection and how that was marked. Why did I give this one 6 and that one 9? You actually have to think about things like that all the time. So there's different ways we can benchmark learner performance. And Colleen speaks about norm-based, speaks about criterion-based and standards-based. Standards-based is the closest to TEHFS. We're quickly going to have a look at this on how you can benchmark your learner performance. The first one is what we call norm-based. It's when I rank you according to where you are in terms of your average mark with other students in the class. So we've got Sally. Where is she? If she's written a test and she gets 30, where do I rank her against other students? So I'm measuring her against other students as well. So this compares individual learners with the performance of other learners. Then I rank them in their position. Okay, she got 60, so she goes to number 6 or whatever it might be. It's still a standardized test. It's marked in the same way. The average mark is calculated, and then I rank students according to their marks that they got. The limitation of this is that it does not pay attention to what they have learned or what they haven't learned. So if she comes 7th, what does it mean? How well has she learned the work or not? If they all have achieved very high marks, maybe I can say with 7, she knows quite a lot. But say the highest mark was 50% and she's number 7. It does not say much about how much she actually achieved. She might have achieved very little, even though she is number 7. This is the next one, criterion based. It means I'm not measuring Sally against the students. I'm measuring her against certain criteria. So to pass this test, you need to get 10. Sally got 9.5. So therefore, that means she is close to the mark. I can say she is nearly meeting the standards. It's a predetermined standard, which I've called out. And I can say, if she received 5, that means she would have failed, but she got nearly 10. So I'm comparing the performance of the learner against a performance criteria. And I established that before they attempt the assessment. So I'm going to say that they've got to get 10 for this assessment, but if they get less than 5, that means they're going to fail. It tells me what they have learned or not learned in terms of that performance criteria, whatever they might be. Maybe it's 5 things they need to be able to do. And I've got a checklist to see what those 5 things are. If they meet the minimal, which I said is 5, then they pass, okay? However, if they don't meet that, that means they haven't passed. The difficulty here is, what is the minimum level that we need to determine? So is it going to be 4? Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 6? You might say it must be 7. How do we determine that? And this categorization may disguise important facts, because it also says, what did the students actually learn? What more must they learn? What don't they know, depending on my criteria? So we must be careful when we use this as well. Standards-based, as I said, is closest to TEHFS, where it gives a detailed description of different levels of achievement. Remember the levels, the 1 to 7 in the TEHFS document. And standards define a range of achievement levels. Remember, 1 to 7. And often students will be motivated to strive for excellence in terms of these different levels. You can also allow the students to have special needs. You can give them extra time. You can give them a scribe if they can't write well. So you can also allow that within standards-led referenced assessments. Performance is judged by comparing the student to the standards. So I'm comparing you to 7, I'm comparing you to 6, I'm comparing you to 5. I'm not comparing you to other students. So I match my learners against the standards, and this places them on a continuum as well of achievement. Again, I'm not comparing them to Jack or Ayanda. I'm comparing them to the standards. It's performance-based. So the National Protocol for Grades R to 12 does not describe assessment in terms of standards. We record the marks, we report the achievements. It has similarities, but they say it's not the same. For example, if a learner achieves 7, that scale of 7 of possible achievement, and it's not placed in rank order. So it's 7, it's not compared to others. I've met that standard of outstanding performance. And there they all are. The 80s, the 200 is your outstanding, whereas your, going back, the number 1 is not achieved, or number 4 is adequate achievement, 50 to 59. So what do different assessments measure? If you look at the Criterion test, an individual score is not affected by the performance of their peers. Okay, so what they get there, they got 40, they could be below proficient, but they're not compared to anyone else. A student may be typical, look at number yellow, it's right at the bottom there, according to the norm reference measures, but they do not show proficiency according to Criterion. So I'm there, I'm on the 50th percentile in norm, so I came number 5, but if I look, I'm actually right at the bottom. Okay, so it's not telling you how good or how bad I am. If I'm doing a norm, I'm at the bottom. If I was doing the Criterion, I'd be at the bottom, but because I'm doing the norm-based ones, and I look like I'm 50th, but I'm not really in terms of what I'm achieving. This is a standard-based, the report card. If I get a 2, that means I'm progressing well towards academic standards, and it's at level, the standards level, which looks very much more like the CAPS to me. So let's just quickly look at the marking process. You as teachers, you're going to have to mark for the rest of your life, and it's become so important. You're going to have lots of students moaning about your marking. I mean, all the time I've marked in my whole life, I've never had one student come in and say to me, Marcel, you've actually given me too many marks. I don't really deserve that 80%. I think I should get more like 72. There's too many marks here. I have only been accused of unfairness and undermarking. So in all my teaching career, and that's a long time, it's amazing that no student has ever felt that I've given them too much marks, and I'm sure at times I have. So marking must be a systematic process of comparing learners' work with a marking guide, and that's what we've got to do all the time. That's why a marking guide is so important. We've got to clarify exactly what we are assessing. That's why you must have your criteria, you must have your rubrics, you must have a complete marking guide. You mustn't have open answers with no suggested answers down. You mustn't have summary questions with no actual answers written down. Otherwise, that's what I feel like, and that's what the marker will feel like. So you should review a sample of learner scripts to be sure that the marking guide allows the marker to assess and comment on the aspects of the learner's work. You should mark blind, not know who you're marking, because then you can be more objective. Follow your marking guide systematically. Yes, look at what the person says. You can develop your marking guide and add more answers in as you go along. Give feedback to your students about what they have achieved. 6 out of 10 could do better. It's not a very good comment. Make them clear, concise, focused. So we should all be providing copious feedback on all your assignments as well. And mark one section at a time. So maybe I should just mark all the paper 1s, then all the paper 2s, because that means I can be more standardized in my marking. If I'm marking a large number, like we all are, I should actually monitor that I'm consistently applying the same rules. Why did I give 9 for reflection here and only 6 there? Let me go and check that out again. Okay, so be constantly monitoring your marking. When you get tired, you sometimes do slip. Yes. So this is all about assessment and how we should use it to see gaps in our teaching and in the students' learning, how we can revisit our teaching, how we can revise our methods, so that we often are not accused of being unfair, but rather fair in the way we mark. If you've got good rubrics and marking guides, all our assessments have gone through moderation. There's no reason why our mark shouldn't be valid and reliable. So what's next? Your parents come in, we've just given out the report cards. They're concerned about the mark that you have given to them. And then you have got your marking guide there, you've got the assessment, and you say, well, what grade do you think it's worth to the parents? And if this has happened to you, if your marking guide is there and they can see what their child has answered, they will actually say, no, ma'am, no, sir, I actually agree with you. That was an excellent mark. So that brings me to the end of this evening's assessment and marking and setting marking guides type of assignment 3 stuff, which I hope has helped you with that, to get some idea of how important reliable and valid marking is, that's consistent using marking guides, how you're going to rank your students, or are you going to order them according to your criteria in a fair and logical manner. Hopefully I can do that as well. Hopefully you can do that as well. So when it comes to marking, all your students are happy and they're contented with their marks because they know it was a fair assessment, and you know what you need to redo or what you don't need to redo, and they can pass to the next grade, and you can finish with your PGCE with a big fat smile on your face. Okay, so good evening. I'm off now. Lovely day in PE. I've got my sister-in-law coming for dinner tonight, so I'm looking forward to that. So I'll see you all through the week on email, and take care. Stay safe, stay warm, stay cool. I'll chat to you again. Bye for now.